back to the secrets of happily ever after. I'm so excited about my guest today. She is an old favorite. She's done several of these with me. She is Amberly Lambertsen, a provisionally certified family life educator with a passion for teaching skills for marriage relationships specifically. She has a BS in family studies and is currently working towards an MED, family life education emphasis, set to graduate in December. Congratulations. Amberly's expertise includes creative date night solutions and ideas, which you know I love, increasing emotionally and physical intimacy and connection, which I also love, making time for marriage every day, continuing to pursue and date your spouse, clear and regular communication, and having fun together. Such great specialties, and you know why we are such good friends. Hi.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here.
Is there anything that I missed or anything else that you would like the viewers to know about you?
I realized as you were reading that I will be a fully certified family life educator by the time this
airs.
posted. Within the next couple weeks, we're recording this end of August. I don't know what I'm gonna say, October. And in a couple weeks, I'll hit my work hours to be fully certified. So there you go. That's an update.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations. I know you've worked so hard and I know it will be so worth it. So very good. So let's start with the question that I'm asking all of the experts on this panel. And that is, if you had the undivided attention of all the married couples in all the world for just a few minutes, what is the most important concept you could teach them about how to live happily ever after with their spouse?
So I was thinking about this. I was out driving today and I was thinking about this and I was thinking, we always say and they lived happily ever after. It's like the end of all the fairy tales, right? The end of all the chick flicks of fairy tales. And I think it should say, and they continue to build their happily ever after together or something like that, because your happily ever after starts when you get married, but that's not the end of the story. That's really just the beginning of the story. And you have to do these things every day if you want to keep that fire burning, if you want to have, continue to have the sparks and really to continue to be that couple that you have built up to be on your wedding day. And if you do those things, you're only going to continue to be a better couple, and you're going to get 10 years, 15, 20, 60 years in, and you're going to look at newlyweds you and you're going to say, we were so in love, we were so giddy, we were so Twitter-pated, but we didn't know what happily ever after was still to come. And so I think it's that, I always talk about making your marriage a priority every single day. It's those little things that you're doing every single day, and it's continuing to work on your marriage that's going to give you that happily ever after, at the end of every day, and they continue to live happily ever after together. You're writing that happily ever after, but it doesn't end at marriage, it doesn't end on your wedding day with the tying of the knot.
Yes. Oh, great answer. I knew I'd love your answer. Okay. Well, I am excited to hear your 3 things couples can do daily to create their happily ever after together.
Yes, and I actually have just been thinking about this this week as well, and focusing in a little bit more on a prioritized marriage and what are those simple things, the basics. And I think every day we need to connect emotionally with our spouse. We need to have physical affection, and we need to have fun and laughter. And I think if you have those 3 things every day, you're not trying to spend an hour together every day, or you're not, these are the 3 things, and how are you doing those 3 things every day? What are we doing today to have fun and laugh together? What are we doing today to, have physical affection? And what are we doing today to connect emotionally?
So good. Well, let's break those down for everybody. So what would you say is the key to connecting emotionally, and how can couples start to incorporate more of this in their marriage every single day?
I think the marriage becomes, I say this all the time, it can become so much of the business. You're running a household together, whether that's you live in a house and you're trying to do all those projects, or you're just trying to maintain an apartment, or whatever that looks like. You're running a household together in some way, shape, or form. You might be raising kids together. You might have a business together. You could be traveling and adventuring together, but those things all come with business, right? They all come with a budget. There's always all sorts of things that are breaking. My house has currently 5 things we need to fix, and you're like, oh, we're good. And then the chain on the garage doors snaps. And you're like, cool. Next project. You've got all these things that you're doing together. That's a real life thing for real. That happened to me this summer. You've got all these things that you're doing together, but emotionally connecting is that stuff you did before you were married. So you didn't have, some couples might have had a household they were running, but when you're in those dating stages, you're not trying to run a household together. You're not trying to raise kids together, those kinds of things. You're really just connecting emotionally every day outside of your life. Like when I started dating my husband, I was in school and he was getting a job because he'd just come home from a 2-year mission. And I had a job, and in the middle of our dating, we both started working more hours, and all those things were kind of aside from our relationship. Like we talked about those, but all the things we were doing every day were those things that were just, I would say, fun, but connected us emotionally, helped us get to know each other better and connect on that level where we were like, yeah, I could do life with this person forever. And I think you have to continue to connect emotionally because like we talked about, like your marriage doesn't become perfect the day you get married. Your relationship is not perfect. It continues to grow and build. You don't know everything about your spouse when you get married, there's still more to learn. And as you shift into different phases and stages and even different days, like my favorite song is different every single day. Like, so if my husband would be like, what's your favorite song?
Monday jam, Tuesday jam, Wednesday.
Today it's this, or for 3 weeks it's this, and then I'm like, oh, I discovered this new favorite song, and this is my favorite song. And I think like my favorite color will always be purple. That's gonna stay the same. But he could always ask me about my favorite song, or what of food am I craving right now? So there's always things you can get to know about your spouse, whether it's how are you feeling about current events, or how did this affect you, or tell me a story about that happened to you today when we were apart. Those kinds of things that you would talk about when you were dating, I think they start to just like, you just assume you know this about me, or that it doesn't matter, or you don't care if I tell you about this stupid little thing that I did today, And so I think connecting emotionally is connecting on that personal level. And I love things like conversation starters for this. There's all sorts of apps and cards and books and whatever, and they can help you to ask those questions. They're going to help you emotionally connect. And so I always recommend that couples have a daily connecting ritual, and it can be the same thing every day. Like maybe you do the dishes together and listen to music every night after dinner while the kids play before bed, whatever. Or you go on a walk every night, or you get up early and drink coffee together every morning. Whatever that looks like for you, it could be the same every day, or it could be different. Like some nights I go join my husband as he waters the lawn, and we just talk, and I follow him around while he waters the lawn. And some days I'm sure he's like, I would like to be alone. But it gives us time to connect. And other times it's just sitting in bed before we put the kids to bed, and I'm getting ready to do work and homework, and he's getting ready to do homework, and we take 5 minutes to just like talk. And so it's just doing something connect personally every day. And I'm going to share this. I just thought of this. I shared this on Instagram a while ago. I found a TikTok where this person had been building their new house or something, and somebody asked them, why do you have 2 shower heads? And she did this whole long spiel about like, we love to have 2 shower heads because we like to shower together. And that's not like a weird, like it could become a physically intimate thing, but I'm not just sharing with you like, hey, I shower together every night. This is our time to connect, because we hop in the shower together. We're washing. I've heard people say it just feels like you're just washing off all the stress and all the crap from the day. And it's a time when you're like just together and nobody else is there. And I mean, do my kids still bother me in the shower? Yes, but and that's where they connect. And it was amazing to me. I've heard this from multiple couples, but the number of comments on her post of couples saying, yes, we love doing this. This is totally our thing. And so you find what works for you. And it might just be sharing popsicles on the deck, or it might be jumping in the shower together at the end of a long day. And it can be more than just emotionally connecting, but it can just be for that emotional and physical being together. So I'll add that on the end of that. But the daily connecting ritual will help you stay connected emotionally.
I love it. I call that daily connections, but same idea, like just so important every day to check in, because every day we're changing and every day we're having experiences, even if we're together 24/7. I love to say this, like you're experiencing the world differently. Like I'm seeing it through my lens and you're seeing it through your lens, right? And so even if we're together all the time, like on vacation or whatever, you can still find ways to talk about like things that I observed this and you observed this, like totally such great advice. And emotional intimacy is the driver
Yes.
of physical and sexual intimacy. So let's talk about that physical affection. What if one partner likes it and one partner doesn't? Is there a way to compromise on that?
Yeah. So adding on to your thing, I say that intimacy is the like, know, and trust you have in a person.
Mhm.
You can have levels of intimacy with everyone in your life, and that doesn't mean that you're physically intimate with everyone in your life.
Right.
That sex, it does not equal intimacy. That physical affection does not equal intimacy, but those things are intimate. I started saying intimacy because that's kind of how
Yes.
people say.
Yeah.
But the physical affection, I actually was talking to someone about this on Instagram the other day, and they were saying, I'm so many weeks pregnant and I'm just uncomfortable and am just overwhelmed by the end of the day and so touched out. And my husband's love language is physical touch, and I just don't want it. And one thing I always like to say about physical affection, going back to the intimacy, is physical affection is not just sex or, what happens in the bedroom. There's so much more to it. It can be simply like you're walking past your spouse in the kitchen and you put your hand on their waist or the small of their back, or rub their shoulder as you walk past, or scratch the back of your head. You can be in the car and just like holding hands or scratching their head again. Or I always say couples like, a lot of couples like to cuddle at night, although I'm finding more and more that do not like to, we have separate blankets. We
like
sleep
to
on
touch
opposite sides.
feet. Like
We
I
like to touch
can't
feet.
fall asleep unless my feet are like touching some part of his leg.
Yeah. So like touching feet or like holding hands as you fall asleep, or even like sometimes my husband and I just connect pinkies, and it's not a big, huge, massive embrace, but it is intentional and meaningful physical connection where I'm saying like, hey, not up to sweat with you tonight, but I want you to know I'm here and I love you. And so I think it can be as simple as that. And I have a post on my website that talks about physical touch, how to love with physical touch. But I also have one that talks about meaningful physical touch, and it goes into that. Like, you don't have to embrace each other 10 times a day. There's a science behind how many meaningful physical touches a person needs a day. And that's not related to like relationship connection. It's just everybody needs that. It's important. But it goes into more than that. It's not just grabbing a hug or kissing each other or, cuddling on the couch 10 times a day. It's those little things, again, that you're doing throughout the day, grabbing a kiss as you walk out the door and connecting when you get home, or, you know what I mean? Things like that, that you can have your knees touching at the dinner table, or be sitting close enough to each other on the couch that again, you could touch toes or something,
Yes.
something. Sometimes my husband will be I'm like looking at our couch. He'll be laying on one side of the couch and I'll be laying on the other, and we'll be crossing, and just the edge of our thighs are touching. But we're together instead of on two opposite couches, or not even. And it creates that physical affection. And so thinking creatively and thinking outside the box, and what works for you and what works for your spouse, and how can we compromise, and knowing that like, hey, I'm really touched out today. I need like 30 minutes to just totally be by myself before I can connect with you. And so I think that's important too, because some days that will be a thing and some days it won't. And I don't know. I'm watching my dog sleep over here, and he loves to be like right next to us. And then I'll have like a kid that wants to be right next to us, or like in my lap, or, and you will get touched out, or maybe just physical affection isn't your thing, but you can find ways to have that in your marriage without, like I said, feeling like you're just, I want to say smothered, and I don't want it to sound like a negative thing, but you can feel like that, right? Overwhelmed, too much.
Yeah. And I think very clear communication about the types of touch that you enjoy is a great way to go, because there's very few people that don't ever want to be touched. I mean, that's like kind of extreme and probably pretty rare, but you can have open lines of communication of like, at the end of the, give me 30 minutes. Like that was a good suggestion. Or, I like to be touched on the small of my back, but, don't mess with my legs or whatever, there's like, you can just talk about it. And I think too is the expectation sometimes, like I want a hug, but I don't want to get down and dirty in the kitchen, right? Or like whatever, like those types of just expectations, or parameters around touch. I think it's important to talk about those things.
Yeah. And I do think in addition to that, I think there are some couples that might be at a point in their marriage where, or it might be a thing where they feel like, or it is reality that any physical touch is going to lead to the hanky panky, you know what I mean? Like, and maybe it's just because they don't touch physically and that's the only time they do, or maybe it's because that's just how it's been. And maybe as newlyweds, that's how it was. And so that it's just continued, that's, and you can say, hey, time out. And like you said, communicate about that. And like, it can even be like right in the moment, like, hey, I really need a hug from you, but that's all.
But don't let your hands wander.
Yeah. Can we just cuddle and just cuddle? Like, just cuddle, no anything else, and you can set those parameters, like you said, even if it's something that may be foreplay for you normally, you can be like, hey, let's just make out. I know tons of people that it's like, let's just make out, like no hands wandering, like just like when we were teenagers, that's all we're doing right now. And so I do think that is important, like you said, that, and that's where that emotional communication comes in, and that emotional intimacy, I think, because you have to be willing to be vulnerable and open, and be willing to accept that vulnerability and openness from your partner and not be offended. Like, oh, you don't want me right now? Like, yes, but no. Do you know what I mean? So I think there is that piece to it too, where you have to be willing to open up yourself a little bit and say what's on your mind, and be willing, have that, back and forth connection there.
And I think appropriate physical affection is so important. And it starts when your kids are young. I've noticed my kids, the 8-second hugs are so important to them. And then I've noticed my husband, when he's super stressed, when he's been working all day and then he comes home, like grabs a sandwich and then heads off to like soccer practice or whatever he's doing. Like I notice if I'll just like stand in his way, he's like, I can tell he's all up in his head and his thoughts and he's like stressed about everything, and I'll just like stand in his way, like, so he can't get out the door without just like stopping and just taking a breath, and I'll just let him like hold him for a second and he breathes and he's like, okay, I can do it. Right. Like, it's important to know each other and what you really appreciate and appropriate levels of touch for different situations.
Yeah. And that those things aren't going to totally derail your day too. Like, you can do an 8-second hug or a 10-second hug and you're going to be just fine getting, even if you're running late, like,
yeah,
it's really not. And I'll do that too, where like my husband will be running out the door and I'm like, because our routine is different now that the kids are in school. I'm like up and going when he runs out the door rather than like being in bed working or being in bed still sleeping. And so he's used to coming to the side of the bed and giving me a kiss. And so I'll have to be like, hey, I need my kid, because the kids are all over him and I'm like, wait for me. So it's kind of like that, where it's like, you have to be okay saying like, hey, wait, I needed this, or hey, you missed me, or
yeah.
So
good. Okay. And so the final 3, and you're really good at this part, but how can we bring more fun and laughter into our relationship, and why is it even important?
So I think that fun and laughter is going to keep you grounded as a couple. Again, it takes you away from the business side. And I tell couples, like, even if you're in the middle of a really hard challenge, or if you're mourning something in your life, it's okay to laugh and have fun. One of the times I think about a lot and I talk about a lot when it comes to fun and laughter in marriage is when our daughter was in the NICU. And I've actually been thinking about this a lot because she turns 6 at the end of this week. And she was only in the NICU for 3 weeks, but it was kind of like an undetermined amount of time. Like, we found out the day before, oh, she'll probably go home tomorrow. And so it was just every day. And there were the stresses of, we had a toddler at home and my husband was working and we were trying to balance, you know what I mean? And I just remember we laughed and had so much fun together every single day. And we were just sitting there with our child every day, or, but we laughed and we'd share funny videos with each other. Like, oh, Benson said this, or look at this silly face that Emmy made. Or the dog was, we have a video. The dog was like so happy to see me because I hadn't been home since Thursday. And it was a Monday night when I came home, and he acted like he'd been abandoned. And Joe got a video and we'd watch that, like, oh, remember how abandoned, but I think that's important because I think it grounds you again, and it just relieves that stress, just like the emotional connection and the physical affection do. It just helps you to stay, I want to say, like, in love. It continues to create that spark, and it just gets you connected in that way where you're like, oh yeah, I do like this human. I do really like this person. And so for us in our marriage, like, that's been a huge part of our marriage. I had a friend who shared a date idea on her Instagram, and it was going to like a comedy club or an improv show. And I was like, this is a regular for us. Like, we love comedy shows. We love improv. We love, it's at least like every other month that we're doing something like that for date night. And now it's like, my husband loves memes. That's like, I joke, that's his sixth love language. Memes are his love language. He has friends that they only send memes back and forth. They never actually talk or text about anything unless they're in person. It's just memes that go back and forth for like forever. And so if I can send him a good meme, or if he started doing this for me, because I love like TikToks and reels, just like the really funny, simple ones that just I connect with. He's started sending me those, and he's realized like, oh yeah, I get it. And so it's those simple things, whether you're just sharing a story from the day, or a joke, or a meme, or a video that you've seen, or you're going to see comedy, or you're watching some like YouTube comedian. We do that all the time too. We'll just watch our favorite, or even just the things that you like to do together. Like, couples will sit and play volleyball and they'll laugh hysterically the whole time, or go on a hike and laugh over the, we went wave running. I don't know if that's the term. We rode wave runners, and my husband tipped us off.
Yeah.
And my child, and it was stressful in the moment. My 7-year-old he'd never been like in the water in a life vest, and he had the understanding that it wouldn't let him go under. So he thought he was drowning, and his life vest wasn't working because he went under the water before popping back up. And I was not happy with being tossed in, but it was something that like we just have been talking about and giggling about ever since. And my husband thought it was hysterical, and it was just like the funniest moment of his day. And so I think just being willing to laugh together, whatever that looks like for you, taking a minute to have a dance party, or I don't know, have some sort of like competition, if it can be fun and not competitive, just something fun. Going back to that kid side of you.
There's something that you talk about a lot that I love, and it's just like taking just a really like normal mundane activity that you would do, like watching a movie together, and doing it outside on a blanket, right? Like just changing it up a little bit so that you can do the just regular things, but you're doing them in a way that introduces a little more fun into whatever the activity is.
Yeah, it makes it more novel.
Yes.
And I wish I could remember the statistic off the top of my head. It's in one of my books, but they talk about how novelty in relationships, it creates that feeling that you have when you're like in the beginning of falling in love. You think about like those first few weeks, and like your spouse's text message is just like, they can just be saying something so simple, like, yeah, I'm just taking my lunch, eating some ramen noodles, and you're like, like,
he's so cute.
Yeah, love that they're talking to you, or you just get so excited to see each other. And you can fall into that like mundane routine with everything every day, and bringing, like you said, just changing that up just a little bit, changing your routine around like the way you do something, or you go to the same restaurant every day or every week for date night. Maybe you go to the same type of food, but you go to a totally different restaurant, or you sit in a different booth, or, something that just makes it a little bit different and creates that novelty in your relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, so fun. Well, you brought up date night, which I love. And like me, you are so passionate about date nights, which I think is really, really fun. But why do you think that's so important?
So I think weekly, regular date nights combines all of these three things that we've been talking about: that emotional connection, fun and laughter, and physical affection. I always say date night to me is any time that you're spending intentionally connecting with your spouse, that's set aside to do something fun together. And it can be at home, it can be in the car, it can be out and about, it can take 20 minutes, it could take 5 hours, whatever that looks like. It's that intentional time to connect. And so sometimes for us, we have sat on the back porch and we've eaten a popsicle, and we've talked about like what do we want to do next in this project, and it's fun and we're dreaming together and we're planning together and it's simple and it's 30 minutes and we're done. Other times we're like out going to see a show, going to lunch and all the things. And so I just think it's really important because it combines all of those things and gives you that intentional time together. So weekly date nights, I'm a big fan of.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, please tell them where they can find you and your books and learn more about what you're doing.
Yeah, so my website is prioritizemarriage.com. I have tons of great content, date night ideas, those simple ways to connect every single day. And my books are over there as well. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok at A Prioritized Marriage. So
perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Monica.
To learn more ways to deepen your intimacy and strengthen your relationship, make sure you watch this video next.